Hello and welcome to Curated Spaces, the podcast that explores the stories behind spaces reimagining how we stay, work and play. Join me, Molly Cooper, as I sit down with founders, owners and thought leaders to hear about their journey of bringing a space to life. Great spaces shape our lives. They inspire, nurture and connect us. But most importantly, they bring us together to share life's milestones with the people who mean the most to us. So whether you're a traveller, foodie or design seeker, join us as we celebrate the power of spaces and the brilliant people behind them. Today I'm on the North Cornwall coast at the stunning Watergate Bay Hotel, which stands in pride of place over a 2-mile stretch of stunning Cornish beach. The hotel's building may have been around since 1905, but today it is a contemporary space that's all about having a good time with family and friends and getting out in the elements in this very special corner of the world. And I'm delighted to welcome Ben Harper, Group CEO, who is not only going to share the story behind this brilliant space, but also fill me in on how the hotel is adapting to changes in how we stay, work and play. Ben, welcome to the podcast. It's such a pleasure to be here. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me and welcome.
Thank you very much. And it's a bit of a rainy day out there today in Cornwall, but the surfers were out in full force this morning in the sea. Lovely to see.
Yeah, there's a good bit of swell there, but there's absolutely teeming down with rain. So sorry we couldn't welcome you with a bit of Cornish sun today.
Well, you can't have everything, and I'm still delighted to be down here with you. Now, before we get into the space itself, I'd love to hear a bit about your background and how you've ended up here at Watergate Bay.
Yeah, so my very much a travel and hospitality specialist. I started off with bigger companies, so I worked my way up through the sort of commercial teams within Eurostar. 20 years ago now. Just at the point where Eurostar was fighting for market share over the short haul airline. So it was a really fun, quite disruptive time. And my responsibility there was I suppose, selling Eurostar to the corporate travel sector. I moved briefly to British Airways. And then I spent a year or so there and then found the service department space, which was, again, in its infancy when I started. And it was about positioning a new way to stay, predominantly for the corporate sector. So an apartment versus a hotel room. And I think that's, I suppose, an important part of the jigsaw puzzle as we talk about some of the stuff that we're working on here. Yeah. I had a really interesting and fun ride for about 10 years within that sector. We did some really cool stuff. We took Seiko, which was a small family-owned service department provider, through a private equity cycle. We created a brand called Lock, which is LOCKE, which is the first sort of lifestyle aparthotel brand to really cut through. We did that sort of 7 or 8 years ago now. And then that business was turbocharged by Brookfield, who are a big asset manager and asset real estate investor, and now they're across numerous gateway cities in Europe and doing an incredible job. And again, there's some real learning and inspiration from that journey that I'm now bringing to life in this business, which is, it's just really fun. But I suppose the sort of personal side of the story is that at the point at which we sold the business to Brookfield, I'd been living in Cornwall for 10 years already. I'm from Kent, moved to Cornwall. My wife's Cornish, and I'm told that Cornish people tend to come home. And we had always planned to come back to Cornwall. It just so happened through some personal stuff that we did it a lot earlier. So I spent 7 years commuting between London, Bristol, Birmingham, New York, whatever, coming home and landing in Cornwall for the weekend. And you can probably associate with the fact that got a little tiring. Yeah. At that point, I was connected to Will Ashworth and his team, who were running the business at the time, and it just felt like an opportunity not to be lost, because it was the most ambitious business, probably the most aspirational set of brands, but 45 minutes from my home. Yeah. So it meant that I could go home most nights, which was great with a young family and important. So here we are, 5 and a bit years on.
Yes, the stars really lined there. Quite the opportunity, not to be missed.
No, it was the right decision, and we can talk a little bit about it. But it's been an interesting 5 years, obviously, with lots happening within our control, but much more happening outside of our control. So we've been working pretty hard.
Yeah, and I can't wait to get into that. But before we do, let's touch a bit on the local area. Here we are in Cornwall. I'd love for you to sort of paint a picture about where we are in the world for people who maybe haven't visited this part of England. I don't know if you've got any local recommendations, favourite spots or things to do.
Well, I hear Watergate Bay Hotel's nice.
Yes.
No, I mean, I actually live down on the south coast, and it's about 45 minutes, more like an hour from here. And it's interesting, the contrast between the North Cornwall coast and that South Cornwall. But it's truly unique, and it's interesting. I looked at some data around visitors into Cornwall, and there is a significant chunk of people who are so loyal to Cornwall, and I know you'll have mates, or maybe even yourself, who always holidayed with their family in Cornwall. And this kind of North Cornwall coast is a bit of a mecca. And again, I think the numbers suggest that it's about 35% of people in Cornwall through the summer are people who come back year over year over year, and probably take the same hotel or take the same house and do the same things. But really, it's about getting in the water, surfing, swimming. There's a great food scene down here now. Some great restaurants. There's some very well-known chefs, Ainsworth being one of them, Emily Scott, who we worked with at Watergate, doing great things, and I suppose adding an element of probably an element of quality to the Cornwall food scene that perhaps hasn't existed previously. But yeah, food, getting in the water, walking the coast path, running. And I think it's those last few things around getting active out in the elements that have really come to life, particularly through and post-COVID, where people have realised the importance for their mental, physical well-being on getting out in the elements. And I think that's played into the hands of our business. And I'm just looking out there on a particularly rainy day, there'll still be people out there running, walking, in the water, on the beach, despite the weather. And it's that kind of, I suppose, cathartic element of the experience and being outside in Cornwall that plays into the brand experience that we try to create at Watergate. And that was certainly the vision of our founders. And again, we can talk more about that.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting you talk about this almost cult following. I have to say, when I tell people I'm going down to Cornwall to record an episode, people's faces light up in a way that you don't see for other regions, I find. And actually, in particular, Watergate Bay Hotel has been the one place when I've been like, oh, I'm heading down. Any recommendations? People are like, I used to go there every single year. My friend was talking about the bedrooms with the bath in the window, just has such a loyal following. So let's get into the space. I'd love to start back at the beginning and talk a bit about the history of this amazing building.
Well, as you said in your very accurate intro piece, it was built in 1904. The original purpose of the hotel was as a railway terminus for, I think, a Newquay to Padstow railway line that in fact never actually materialised, as I believe the story. I wasn't around, and my history isn't brilliant. But then it transitioned into an officers' mess for the military through the Second World War. And then John and Mary Ashworth, who are the parents of our founder and exec director, Will Ashworth, who is still very much in the business. They bought it in 1967, and through that, where are we? I don't know, 50-year journey. It's transitioned from holiday apartments into sort of seaside mass market hotel, and then Will joined in, I believe, 2004, having studied hospitality and done some traveling in hotels overseas. Came back into the business and took up the reins, and I think that was the moment that we started to move into the lifestyle space. And I think that's the vision of him and his brother to create more than just a bucket and spade seaside holiday. And how they did that is a really fascinating story. And I suppose my job 5 years in with my team is to shape what that next chapter looks like.
Yeah, and it's so interesting you say that, because actually when you look at the hotel from the outside, you see the old building and it almost faces inwards, which I think these days you think that's so jarring. Why is it not facing out to sea? Obviously the railway. But then every extension, every new development has slightly turned the hotel more and more towards the sea, towards that incredible beach and view. So you get this very sort of visual depiction of that journey towards the spaces today. I just think it's so interesting to look at.
It's really interesting that you pick up on that, and that, yes, any architect will instantly say we've just got to maximise that view and give people access to that view, and we're very mindful of that through the creation of the spaces and the design of the spaces. But actually what's quite interesting is that because not every space within the hotel does offer that sea view, whatever we do, our guests veer towards the view.
Yeah.
And so we have to be very mindful of that when we're trying to create the capacity that we need to run a busy hotel.
Yeah.
But again, that's super detailed that we can get into if you like later.
Well, yeah, let's talk about then the space. So I know someone compared it to sort of a ski resort on the beach, and I love that analogy. And I think it really touches on a few things that make this place so special. Can you tell us a bit more about that feeling and what you've tried to create?
Yeah, the vision of Will and Henry, the two brothers, was to create a ski resort on the beach. And I love this, and I use it every day when I'm starting to think about. I think these brand visions are really important to help shape strategies, plans, but also a lens for decision making. And I see ski resort on a beach as a really practical way to do that. And I've done ski seasons, and ski resorts are unique places where people go with one focal point, which is to get up on the mountain and ski.
Yeah.
No matter how good you are or how bad you are. And the vision in the early days was to bring people from London, probably a younger demographic than we see now, and give them access to the beach. And so, the Watergate Bay brand 20 years ago was probably a little bit more edgy. So they were the first to really pioneer the kite surfing vibe. And that brought a real particular crowd, but a really interesting edge to the brand, and created this sense of destination. Clearly, we've morphed into probably a more affluent and, for want of a better word, mainstream market, which has enabled us to create a very commercially successful business that runs at 92% occupancy year round, rather than just a thing that pops up and winds down.
Yeah, crazy summer and
right, which is frankly what many of the hospitality and tourism businesses do around here. The moment you deseasonalize any of these businesses is the moment you create real success commercially. And I think we have to balance the need to do that with the need to create this, maintain the edge to our brand. So to answer your question, ski resort on a beach, the way I explain it, it's this ecosystem of different leisure hospitality experiences that all focus on one thing, the beach.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a brilliant surfer to come stay at Watergate Bay. You don't have to be a brilliant surfer to get in the water every day. And I think that's become quite key. However, we do have the best in class surf hire and tuition. We have a brilliant surf school within the bay. The idea that we've intentionally segmented our F&B into sort of different brand experiences, as you would find in a ski resort. Yeah. So it's very rare that you'd go and stay in a big hotel and eat in the restaurant every night in a ski resort. You go out and do different things, subject to how long you'd stayed in the pub after you'd been on the mountain, or whether you wanted something a little bit more upscale. And the idea that we can create that vibe is really interesting. And an analogy I use, again, from having worked in ski resorts, is what I used to love is that you could walk into a bar in a ski resort and you'd see the École Ski Français, the ski instructors at the bar, having their sort of drinks after having been on the mountain all day. And then as a guest, I found that really cool and really authentic, and I kind of wanted to be in that space with them because it made me feel like I was part of this community.
Yeah.
And we create a bit of that in Watergate by trying to keep everything as accessible as we can. So I think that's quite a nice lens to see things through. We want, whilst we are a upscale aspirational brand at a relatively high price point, the accessibility of our spaces is really key, and we want everyone to be welcome and feel welcome, and that's a key part of our hospitality offering as well.
Yeah, I so get that. The hotel itself is sort of in this like little, you go over a hill, you arrive in this tiny hamlet, it feels like, and the hotel is there, and then you go down a little pathway to the beach, and there's a coffee shop on the side, somewhere selling hot dogs. It does feel like it's very in the midst of this little collection of buildings. Like you say, École Ski Français, you can imagine the surf instructors going in after their lessons, grab a pint. It feels very much at the heart of this community, not behind a big wall, behind, a ticketed entrance or anything, which I really like.
And that's intentional. It's something that we work hard at, and we have to work harder at, because again, that conflict's the wrong word, but balancing the commercial objectives of the business to run high occupancies, to maximise the rates that we can charge, to make sure that our F&B capacity is at full tilt, but being accessible and creating a sense of community for everyone is key. And a really good example of that is the events that we've put on over the years. And again, without pull me back if I'm going down a rabbit hole, but I think it's an important point, which is destination brand, the creation of a destination brand for Watergate Bay rather than us being Watergate Bay Hotel has been an intentional focal point of the brand strategy for the last 20 years. Examples of that, things like, I don't know, did you ever see the polo on the beach?
No, I never, but I wish I had. It sounds
well,
fab.
sadly I didn't. It was before my time, but this vision that we could have competitive professional polo tournaments on a beach, sponsored by Veuve Clicquot, and a free event for the local community to come. I think we did it 3 or 4 times, and it was probably one of the most successful brand activations I would suggest in hospitality in the UK ever. And that's probably
I love it. Make a big claim.
Too bold, but it's a really important part of our story. And sadly, when I joined, it was just probably 2 years before COVID, and then COVID hit, and we couldn't do any of that stuff. So this summer, we at the beginning of this year, we set our plan to say, right, we're going to bring that back into the core of the brand. We're going to bring community-focused, destination-focused events back into the program. So we did what we call our Arts on the Beach. And I don't know if you saw any of the kind of marketing or comms relating to it, but it was a wonderful thing. It was all weekend, completely free for everybody. And we actively moved away from pure sport or pure food, because there's lots of that stuff around here. And we went for this arts theme. So we had dance troupes, we had sea shanty bands, we had some F&B, we had lots of community charitable pop-ups of people kind of talking about some of the stuff that they're doing. We had lots of kids activities, plus the fact it was the most epic weekend of weather in early September. So I think that I suppose is representation of us taking our responsibility and intent to create something that is bigger than just a hotel, and it's a destination, but it's a destination for the community as well as the inbound tourism demand is really important to us, both philosophically and strategically.
And I think it's such a brilliant example of how hotels can play a bigger role within the communities they're in, but also stay very authentic to Cornwall. There's such a creative scene here as well. They've got the Tate down St Ives. So really reflecting that and augmenting and bringing people together who aren't even part of the hotel, like you say. I think that's so special and something that hotels can really give back to the spaces they're in.
Yeah, I think, and again, I'm very open with this, is that, the danger is that, we're a successful business in Cornwall, and we are targeting a relatively upscale market, particularly through school holidays. And we don't want to be seen as that place where the rich people come.
Yeah.
We sometimes we are, but we balance that off with being truly authentic and I suppose adding value back into the community. And it's really important to us. And I think it was a lovely moment in September when we were able to put this event together. And these events, you can imagine, they take a lot of time. They cost a lot of money. They do not make any money. It's not a commercial thing. So it was a lovely moment, and it's just bringing that back into play after all these years of not being able to do that stuff is really satisfying.
Yeah, I love it. And you're right, it really makes experience at the heart of what it means to come and stay here and enjoy the space. And going with that idea of experience, one thing I really love about the hotel is how cleverly sort of zoned it is. And I'd love to talk about all the different pockets of space. Like you said, there's so many different places to eat and drink. Some are much more grown up, sophisticated. Others are so kids friendly. It just means that whoever you're here with, you can find a space that works for you and what you're trying to get out of it there. But I'd love to hear about how bringing that to life happened.
Yeah. Well, I suppose on a commercial level, to my point before, that the how you deliver 90% occupancy in a 100% leisure-driven market on a beach in Cornwall, we need different pockets of demand, and we talk in hospitality about different segments, right? So we've got different audiences for different times of the year. If you come in August, families, 100% families. They could be multi-generational families. They're big families with dogs, gran and granddad, daughter, husband, 3 kids, 2 dogs. I mean, and it's a busy place. And if you go down to the hotel now, it will be what that ugly term of sort of the empty nesters. So perhaps a more mature audience whose kids have flown the nest and they're coming to walk the coast path, but they're coexisting with perhaps a younger demographic of young parents with preschool kids or younger people without kids, who are all coexisting in this kind of aspirational sort of lifestyle focused experience. And how it works, sometimes I look around and think, I just don't know. But you're right that there is real intent behind the spaces that we've created. And I suppose living space is the best example of that, which is it's positioned as our guests' lounge. And it's not the traditional hotel bar, but it's somewhere that we've created in order to allow or incentivize or hope that people can just hang there all day, play a game at chess, drink tap water, or have a really beautiful 3-course meal and very wonderfully put together cocktails and a great wine list. And again, that's done with intent, so that during the day the space feels quite different than it does in the evening. And that can be through table configuration, it can be through lighting, it can be through different music, but it's all done with intent. And there are clearly commercial drivers to that, but what's most important is that is a space for the guest. And to your point previously, that is the most epic space with the most epic view overlooking Watergate Bay, which even on a day like this, you can sit there and drink tea and read a book and be very, very happy. And it, again, almost cathartic when you spend 48 weeks of the year in a city.
Exactly. And actually just below there you have this sort of lounge area with those incredible picture windows. I was down there actually this morning and there was a little fire crackling, talk about ski resort on the beach. And it's just such a calm, tranquil space, and a lot of people are working there or, like, say, reading a book. So I know you've been doing a lot of work around this whole shift in how people are working and, not just chained to an office 48 weeks a year, but choosing to work differently. Love to hear a bit about that.
I think there's a couple of things within that. One is that I think, sadly, the gap between work and leisure time has tightened. I know from my own personal experiences, I'm actually not very good at saying, I'm going off for a week, you won't hear from me. I actually feel more comfortable, and actually my family feel more comfortable with me knowing that I can check in and be there if I need to be there, and jump on a Zoom call or just do half an hour of emails. And I'm seeing that a lot around our hotels of people who need that space, and it conflicts with the sort of well-being message of digital detox. But my own personal view is that people will do what they want to do, and it's their choice to do. I think there's definitely a kind of work from anywhere vibe going, and that's not necessarily people saying, right, I'm going to come and stay at Watergate Bay for a month and use it as my home and my office, because it's actually not particularly conducive to that. We're actually working on something that will be, which we can talk about if you like. But there's definitely I think there's lots and lots of people who've taken a decision to sort of move out of a more corporate environment and go take a more flexible approach to work, whether it be going freelance or project work. And there are lots of companies out there, as we know, who say you can take 2 weeks a year and work anywhere. I've just come back from a trip in London where I had, 30 different conversations with 30 different people, on all of them working in bigger organizations. They now have a policy where they can take 15, 20 days a year and just be anywhere.
Lovely.
Yeah. And that's cool. And it's actually a really important part of their recruitment strategy and to bring in talent. So the other piece to that is, I think, because everyone has gone remote in some way, shape or form, particularly the bigger, more corporate, professional services, financial institutions, where they realize that actually people can be as productive from home. And now people don't want to go into the office as much, so they have to allow their people to be more flexible. I think the idea of creating and maintaining culture within teams and organizations by bringing people together is harder.
Yeah.
So I used to run sales teams, and every month I'd have my sales team in a room like this, and we'd spend half a day with 75 slides of PowerPoint talking about stuff and doing a really structured meeting. I think that probably happens, but you can probably do that on a 90-minute Zoom call. What I think does need to happen is the bit that, what we used to do then every month is go to the pub together. And that was the really important bit where the laughs happened and you started to create a sense of team and culture. So I think businesses are struggling to do that, and I strongly believe in the way that we're trying to create culture here and create a sense of team here, which is people need to come together and get to know each other and just hang out. And what a brilliant place to do that.
I know.
Which is, I can bring 15 people here. They can all get out in the water. Our surf school, our instructors say they can get anyone standing up on a board within an hour.
Wow.
Anyone. And what a story.
Yeah.
What a way to build teams and create memories. Plus the fact we layer on the ability that people can have a space to work in. We have great meeting facilities here. We're sat here in our office, which has brilliant workspaces, both from a co-working perspective and a sort of boardroom, and bigger rooms upstairs with theatre style seating. So you've got it all, but you've got it in an environment which isn't the Holiday Inn on the M4 with a beige buffet.
Exactly.
And mint imperials on the desk. Although
nothing against mint imperials.
No disrespecting mint imperials, and definitely no respecting the Holiday Inn.
Don't worry, they're not coming on the podcast.
I'm sure they've got some interesting stuff to say.
And I think it's such an inclusive way of doing team bonding. Like you say, it used to happen in the pub, which is great, except you've got people who don't drink, and that's increasing now. And the way that people want to get to know each other maybe isn't over 5 pints. And this way you bring everyone here, everyone loves the fresh air, everyone can give surfing a go, or go swimming or walking. It's an incredibly accessible and inclusive way of getting people out of the big smoke or whatever, city they're in, and bringing them together.
And people talk about it being a generational thing, and I just don't necessarily believe. There's clearly some truth to that, but I don't know. I'm in my mid-40s, and I grew up in an environment where team bonding was going to the pub. Full stop.
Yeah.
incentives were a trip where you get on a plane and go to Vegas and you party for 2 days. And rest assured, that's a right laugh. And, I miss bits of that. But even, whether I'm 45 or 25, I think people's physical and mental well-being and having curated experiences that tap into that in the right way for the right person, I think is a really attractive thing. And we're not necessarily all about Zen and trying to think too hard about it. Actually, what feels more comfortable to us as a brand is probably the more active sort of physical element of that. So the idea that the impact that getting in a wetsuit and in the water in November can do to the defog your mind.
Yeah.
It's just, it's pretty life-changing.
I mean, just ask Wim Hof. But I think there's this real shift in how we actually think about wellness and this sort of rejection of just have a green smoothie. I think people love to do what makes them feel good, whether it is that glass of red with a steak and then a surf the next morning. And I think that Watergate Bay really brings all these elements together into something that is really, really special and actually really good for the soul.
And I don't know whether I try hard to be very open-minded about this, because I think it's a really personal choice on how you approach this stuff. Because if it gets too contrived, if it gets too faddish, I start to switch off from it. So the idea that we can create, and I think you articulate it really well, our own sense, our own style of wellness that connects with the spaces that we have and our brand ethos of active relaxation and being in a ski resort on the beach, where, it might feel a bit odd to be doing meditation classes or something like that. But what does feel really good is the fact that, there's a HIIT class going on the beach. And I think just being really true to our values and our brand when we think about this stuff is really key to me. Otherwise, it just starts to get a bit contrived, and that's where I start to get a bit uncomfortable.
Okay, well, let's talk about the next chapter then. You alluded you've got some exciting things coming up. What does the next stage for Watergate Bay look like? Well,
I mean, we actually have 3 businesses, and we've got a 4th that we're working on. So, but Watergate is really, really clear and really exciting. So we're at the planning application stage of a pretty significant development within Watergate, which will deliver more accommodation. So it'll deliver another around 20 rooms at the higher end of the market. So we successfully opened the Beach Loft development, which is right on the front, and they're the most beautiful, great big suites that if you open the window, you can dangle your feet in the water. They're that close to the beachfront. So we're gonna do more of them, and then we have another development within the bay that we're going to create more. Trying to make it sound more exciting than just saying more leisure facilities, but it's going to be as much about creating capacity and enhancing the guest experience than it is about creating more rooms. And I think that's quite a brave thing to do from a hotelier's perspective, because the natural mindset of a hotel developer is to create more capacity through rooms, because that's the most profitable category within the business. We've realized that actually with real long-term thinking and considering some of the brilliant stuff that's out there within the UK hospitality space now, and our previous point that actually facilities experience that tie in an authentic way to our guests' desire to get active, both indoor and out, is really key. So we're thinking about world-class health and fitness facilities. We're thinking about a really unique and interesting take on sort of family entertainment and kids play in a way that doesn't, again, feel contrived. I don't imagine, a clip and climbing wall, but I do imagine something really cool. And then some bigger accommodation units on the top of that building. So that's, I suppose, the focus for Watergate over the next 5 years. Just to give you a kind of sweep across the other businesses really, really quickly. Another place is, I don't know if you're familiar with Another Place, but Another Place is our hotel brand for growth across new, iconic non-urban markets within the UK. So the vision was to create something that could scale outside of the Watergate business. So taking the ethos of ski resort on the beach, translating it to different
Love that.
different markets within the UK that might not be on the beach. So our first one is on a lake on the shore of Ullswater in Cumbria, and we have number 2 coming, which I can't yet talk about, but number 2 will come in a matter of months.
Oh wow, very exciting.
It is exciting, and it's again, that's going to be a truly unique experience and a really big moment for the Another Place brand. So that business will grow. We have Beach Retreats, which is our self-catering agency business based in Cornwall, which is in a lovely trajectory of growth. We have 250 properties under management at the moment, and that's just a traditional self-catering holiday letting agency.
Okay.
So if you're a second home owner, you can connect with Beach Retreats, who can take care of everything for you from a sales and marketing perspective and operational perspective too. And then lastly, we've created a new brand that will see us move into the aparthotel space. And this is, I suppose, taking, I don't know if we're good for time, I can do a quick 2 or 3 minutes on this. This will be us taking some of the vision of what I delivered in my previous business, which was to take the best of lifestyle hotel like the Ace in Hoxton and blend it with old school serviced accommodation or corporate housing or serviced apartments, depending on what language you use. And those two meet in the middle to form what is now known as the aparthotel. And Locke was the first who really understood that actually bringing lifestyle brand into that, rather than it just being a cookie cutter small studio with a Calagas kind of kitchenette in the corner, but actually bringing authentic community driven brand ethos into that would work. And it has. So my inspiration from that was then reflecting that into the market that we're in here, both geographically and from a demand perspective, which is, I think that works in a leisure coastal environment. And I don't think it exists in the UK. I actually think it does exist in markets like the US and Australia. But again, simply put, to take some of the brand and hospitality ethos of a lifestyle hotel like Another Place or Watergate Bay and blend it with flexibility and freedom that you get from staying in a holiday let, an Airbnb, one of our beach retreats, holiday homes. And I think you've got a really sweet spot in the middle, which is what we're calling a kind of coastal apart hotel. So we bought our first site, which is, I'm pointing behind my shoulder. It's about a mile that way on the coast. It's about a mile from Watergate Bay. And it's a very large 72-bed seaside bucket and spade hotel, sitting on 10 acres of real estate.
Wow.
So it's a big opportunity. It's a relatively big play for us. And that will be developed, and we're on site this week in order to open, we hope, next July.
Wow.
And that will be off the first of these branded coastal apart hotels. 72 apartments, a partnership approach to F&B. So we're bringing in the best and most authentic local specialists in F&B that we can find. So we've found a brilliant local craft beer-led brand to run a restaurant bar concept. We're going to have specialty coffee-led deli, and we're talking to local partners about that. We're going to have, again, really great health and fitness facilities. There will be a local membership available there, which is really lovely because we're not able to have a big membership at Watergate just because we're so capacity constrained. And I suppose that all talks to the point of differentiation, which I believe is, again, this real sense of community, creating a space where it's almost flipping the hotel model to say we're almost prioritizing the community above the hotel guests. And the reason for that is to create this really authentic, interesting set of experiences that our hotel, the aparthotel guests, can feel a part of. It'll have a paddle tennis club in the grounds. Oh,
so trendy.
Which I'm hearing is the big thing.
It's the thing at the moment.
Yeah. And then phase 2 of that is that we'll develop out 25 lodges in the grounds, and there's already planning for that. So it's a pretty big project, and my plan is to I suppose prove the concept through next summer and beyond, and then I see the opportunity to scale that.
It's big times, like you say, all of these apart hotels, there's so many in cities everywhere, but I think you've really hit on a little niche there which is just completely underserved. And as you were speaking, I can so see that with your local coffee makers, these incredible local producers, locals using it during the week, people coming to enjoy their holidays, their days off. I think that'll be a really special space for the, not only for the group, but for the wider community and area.
Yeah, and it gives, I mean, scalability. I suppose my sort of rule to myself on brand is focus, which is it's a really focused vision, because I think you can take this on a number of levels. You could say, right, we could go and buy an old guest house and create some serviced apartments, or you could, but that it isn't that. I suppose our brief will be enough scale to deliver the community spaces and ethos that the brand will demand. Geographically located, so it's within walking distance of a beach and within view of the sea, and within a community, so that we have the footfall and vibe year round. And I think from scaling these hospitality businesses is not an easy thing, because actually finding the sites and finding sites that stack economically is actually the trickiest part to a property-led hotel development strategy that we're deploying. But if you step back and think, okay, I'm sure in every coastal market within the UK there will be a big hotel, and sadly those big hotels have become very hard to operate. They've become very hard to sustain from a cost perspective, because clearly, you know, the cost base is increasing significantly. They've been very hard to resource. So finding a route in to helping create new chapters for hotels like that is quite an inspiring one. Yeah. And strategically sound.
Well, you've got a lot on your plate, a lot to come. Very exciting. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before we do wrap up, I do have a game of Dream Spaces to play with you. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. I just want you to think, you've won the lottery, cash that check. What space comes to mind when I ask you these prompts? So the first one is, what space are you running away to for a detox?
We're just doing a project at home, or we're planning to do a project at home. So for some reason, my Instagram feed, and I'm not big on social media, is absolutely hammered with kind of these design blogs, influencers, whatever. I'm really inspired at the moment by this kind of Japanese design theme, and the idea of really stripped back design in a secluded, I don't know, mountain setting. I don't care where. Yeah. It is really cool. I love the mountains, so I love kind of lakes and mountains. Probably don't quote me on this, probably over beach. But actually, I love the contrast between the two. But at the moment, I'm really inspired by this kind of stripped back Japanese-inspired design. I love the idea of trying to create
so clean, so crisp. Yeah, great answer. Yeah. Okay, slightly different one. Your ultimate birthday party, where are you hosting it?
You're going to laugh, but the idea of having... So at Watergate, at New Year, we do what we call a house party. And it's kind of creating... It's a brilliant thing because a lot of people come back year over year over year and stay 2 or 3 nights and have this house party, and they've become quite familiar with each other. And it's kind of... We lock the hotel down for 2 or 3 days, and it's just this... Yeah, it's a house party where people... And to I suppose my next one's my 50th. I've still got a few years to go. But the idea of kind of an exclusive hire of a big hotel or a big space where I can get friends and family together. And I suppose, living here, a lot of my friends are dispersed across the country and the globe, and seeing them is difficult. So I suppose my ultimate party is to fly everyone in for 72 hours of partying, eating, drinking, getting in the water, whatever is probably. I'm quite simple in that view. That. I don't necessarily need to go anywhere far or particularly exclusive. I just want to create a really cool party vibe for the people who I care about.
Why travel when you can get them to fly here?
Well, again, my mates will tell you that I'm pretty selfish like that. I'd love to see, but can you come to Cornwall?
Newquay Airport is so close to London. I love it. No, I'm not laughing at all. I think that's a brilliant answer. And finally, your once-in-a-lifetime bucket list trip. Where are you going, and are you staying anywhere special?
I don't know. I have got a bit of wanderlust at the moment around. Well, we have a young family, and because of COVID, you just realised that we haven't really done much. We used to travel loads. I used to travel a huge amount globally for work, and we also live here, so we're quite lucky. But we went to the US this summer and realised that actually there's a big world out there, and also realised that our kids are now able to travel. So the short answer is, I would love to go with my wife and 3 daughters. I'd love to go interrailing across Europe and pick off some of the places that we haven't done. We did it for our honeymoon through Italy, and I just love the idea of doing something a bit more kind of stick a backpack on your back, although stay in some nice hotels as well. I don't think I'm going to go hosteling.
Not with 3 kids, no.
No, but I love the idea of doing that and just jumping on the trains. I love rail travel through Europe. I think it's really fun.
I think that's a brilliant answer.
So that will be something that we do in the hopefully relatively near future.
Amazing. Well, I hope you enjoy it when you do get it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been so interesting chatting with you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Curated Spaces podcast. For more information and content around any of the spaces we feature, head to our website or Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe to have new episodes delivered straight to your inbox every Wednesday. And if there's a special place in your life that you'd like to hear on the Curated Spaces podcast, please do get in touch, as we're always on the lookout for more brilliant spaces to share with the world.